It may be only 1/10 of an instant, but you're bound to hear it. And imagine, to this day they still argue that, as the head is being cut off, it may know for a second that it has been cut off. Quite a notion. And what if it's 5 seconds? Portray the scaffold so that only the last step is seen closely and clearly. The criminal has stepped onto it, his head, his face white as paper, the priest offering him the cross. He greedily puts it to his blue lips and stares, and knows everything. The cross and the head, there's the picture. The priest's face, the executioner, his 2 assistants, and a few heads and eyes below, all that could be painted as background, in a mist, as accessory, that's the sort of picture. The prince fell silent and looked at them all. That, of course, is nothing like quietism, Alexandra said to herself. Well, now tell us how you were in love, said Adelida. The prince looked at her in surprise. Listen, Adelida seemed to be hurrying, you owe us the story about the Basel picture, but now I want to hear how you were in love. You were, don't deny it. Besides, as soon as you start telling about something, you stop being a philosopher. When you finish a story, you immediately feel ashamed of having told it, Aglaya suddenly observed. Why is that? This is quite stupid, finally, Mrs. Epanchin snapped, looking indignantly at Aglaya. Not clever, Alexandra agreed. Don't believe her, Prince. Mrs. Epanchin turned to him. She does it on purpose out of some sort of spite. She hasn't been brought up so stupidly. Don't think anything of their pestering you like this. They probably have something in mind, but they already love you. I know their faces. I know their faces, too, said the prince, giving special emphasis to his words. How is that? Adelida asked curiously. What do you know about our faces? The other two also became curious. But the prince was silent and serious. They all waited for his reply. I'll tell you later, he said quietly and seriously. You decidedly want to intrigue us, cried Aglaya. And what solemnity! Well, all right, Adelida again began to hurry, but if you're such an expert in faces, then surely you were also in love, which means I guessed right. Tell us about it. I wasn't in love, the prince replied as quietly and seriously. I was happy in a different way. How? In what way? Very well, I'll tell you, the prince said, as if pondering deeply. Vi. Here you all are now, the prince began, looking at me with such curiosity that if I don't satisfy it, you may well get angry with me. No, I'm joking, he quickly added with a smile. There it was all children, and I was with children all the time, only with children. They were the children of that village, a whole band, who went to school. It wasn't I who taught them, oh, no, they had a schoolmaster there for that, Jules Thibault, or perhaps I did teach them, but more just by being with them, and I spent all my 4 years that way. I didn't need anything else. I told them everything, I didn't hide anything from them. Their fathers and relations all got angry with me, because the children finally couldn't do without me and kept gathering around me, and the schoolmaster finally even became my worst enemy. I acquired many enemies there, and all because of the children. Even Schneider scolded me. And what were they so afraid of? A child can be told everything, everything. I was always struck by the thought of how poorly grown-ups know children, even fathers and mothers their own children. Nothing should be concealed from children on the pretext that they're little and it's too early for them to know. What a sad and unfortunate idea. And how well children themselves can see that their fathers consider them too little and unable to understand anything, while they understand everything. Grown-ups don't know that a child can give extremely important advice even in the most difficult matters. Oh, God! When this pretty little bird looks at you trustingly and happily, it's a shame for you to deceive it. I call them little birds because nothing in the world is better than a little bird. However, they all got angry with me in the village mainly for a certain occurrence, and Thibault simply envied me. At first he kept shaking his head and wondering how it was that with me the children understood everything and with him almost nothing, and then he started laughing at me when I told him that neither of us would teach them anything, but they might still teach us. And how could he be jealous of me and slander me, when he himself lived with children? The soul is cured through children, there was a patient at Schneider's institution, a very unhappy man. His unhappiness was so terrible, there could hardly be the like of it. He was placed there to be treated for insanity. In my opinion, he wasn't insane, he just suffered terribly, that was the whole of his illness. And if you knew what our children became for him in the end, but I'd better tell you about the patient later, now I'll tell you how it all started. The children disliked me at first. I was so big, I'm always so clumsy, I know I'm also bad looking. Finally, there was the fact that I was a foreigner. The children laughed at me at first, and then even began throwing stones at me, when they spied me kissing Marie. And I only kissed her once. No, don't laugh, the prince hastened to stop the smiles of his listeners. There wasn't any love here. If you knew what an unfortunate being she was, you'd pity her as I did. She was from our village,